3 disturbing true high school horror stories.
Story 1. The TWINS who weren't on the lists. I realized they didn't exist in any school records, only when one of them was standing behind my door. When I transferred to Southern Lehigh High School, I thought the scariest thing about high school would be loneliness. Being the new girl. Sitting alone. Eating in silence while everyone else laughed. I had no idea that loneliness was a warning. At lunch on my first day, I stood there holding my tray, scanning the cafeteria. Every table was full, groups everywhere. Eyes slid over me and then away. All except one table in the corner. 2 boys were sitting there. Identical. Not similar, not maybe brothers. Completely identical, same haircut, same posture. Even the way they held their plastic forks was perfectly synchronized. "Can I sit here?" I asked. They looked at each other and smiled at the exact same time. Of course. They introduced themselves as Antonio and Bruno. As we talked, something felt tight, wrong. They knew which class I had transferred into. They knew I lived near the cemetery. They knew my father worked night shifts. I didn't remember telling them any of that. "Small town," one of them said when I asked how they knew. "Everyone knows everything about everyone." I believed him. That was my first mistake. After school, I got a message from Bruno. I had never given him my number. "Want to hang out tonight? There's a cool spot near the cemetery." My heart clenched. I was about to type no. But I was new. And I didn't want to be alone. At 9 p.m., I was walking past the cemetery. The wind moved through dry leaves. The gravestones stood like dark silhouettes. My phone showed their location deeper in the woods. We're by the lake. I stepped between the trees. With every step, it got quieter. Too quiet. "Antonio," I called. Silence. "Brune." Then I heard footsteps. Slow. From different directions. That's when I realized it wasn't just one. When I turned around, someone grabbed me from behind. Nails dug into my neck. I choked, trying to break free. In front of me, another figure stepped out of the darkness. And behind them, a third one stood there. He didn't move. He just watched. "She's faster than she looks," one of them whispered. I elbowed backward, tore free, and ran. Branches slashed at my face. Roots nearly tripped me. I could hear their laughter behind me. They weren't rushing. They were playing. I burst onto the road and ran home until my lungs burned. The next day, I showed my parents the scratches. We went to the principal. I showed him the messages, the location. I described them. He looked at me strangely. "We don't have any students with those names. They sit behind me in history class." He opened the attendance list. There was an empty seat. No one sat behind me. "Those seats have been empty for a month," he said. Cold crept down my spine. I had spoken to them. I had touched the table where they sat. A week later, I woke up freezing. My window was wide open. I shut it and went to my parents' room. When I came back, my bedroom door was slightly ajar. I was sure I had left it open. I stepped closer. Slowly. Through the crack, I saw something dark. A silhouette. I flung the door open. Someone was standing behind it. I screamed. The figure lunged toward the window. My dad ran in just as a leg disappeared through the frame. We rushed outside. There were no footprints beneath the window. No shoe marks, no impressions. Nothing. We decided to move. While packing, I pulled my bed away from the wall. There was a notebook underneath. Old, worn. I had never seen it before. Inside were pages with my class schedule, drawings of my house, diagrams of my room, and photographs. Me sleeping. Me sitting at my desk. Me walking toward the cemetery. And on the last page, a sentence. "The third is always near." I never saw the third face clearly. But sometimes at night, when I wake up, I see a silhouette in the corner of my room. And it doesn't move. 2-story, the locked locker room. First year. I still remember the smell of that gym, dust, cheap deodorant, and something metallic underneath it all. We had a substitute PE teacher that semester. He was around 55, maybe 60. Gray hair, heavy jaw, always breathing through his mouth like he had a permanent cold. The first time he called attendance, he paused on my name. Too long. I looked up. He was staring at me. Not confused, not checking pronunciation. Studying. I told myself I was imagining it. Freshman paranoia, new environment, new faces. But every class after that, I felt it, his eyes on me, during stretches, during warm-ups, when I tied my shoes, when I bent down to pick up a volleyball. He never said anything inappropriate. That almost made it worse. Because it meant I couldn't accuse him of anything. One afternoon after class, everyone rushed out to the locker rooms. I stayed behind for a minute to text my mom. When I finally got to my locker, it wouldn't open. I tried again. And again. Nothing. I checked the combination I'd memorized weeks ago. It didn't work. Most of the girls had already left. Showers were shutting off. Lockers slammed in the distance. He appeared behind me. "Problem?" he asked. I jumped. "My locker won't open." He smiled small, tight. "That happens sometimes. They get reset." Reset. He walked to his office and came back with a clipboard. "A master list of combinations," he said. "Let's fix it." I didn't think it was strange that he followed me into the girls' locker room. I should have. By the time we walked in, only 2 girls were still there. They grabbed their bags and left within seconds, barely glancing at us. Then it was just me. And him. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. He stood close, too close. His shoulder brushed mine as he dialed the lock slowly, deliberately wrong several times. "Strange," he muttered. "Very strange." He chuckled under his breath. My pulse started climbing. Finally, he placed his hand on my shoulder. Heavy. Warm. It didn't move at first. Then it slid. Slowly. Down my back. I stepped forward instinctively. He didn't apologize. He didn't remove it immediately. Instead, he leaned in closer. "You're very tense," he said softly. "You should relax." My stomach dropped. The lock clicked open. He stepped back instantly, like nothing had happened. "There you go," he said casually. "All fixed." And he walked out. I stood there frozen for several seconds, staring at the open locker. Maybe it was an accident. Maybe I was overreacting. I started changing quickly, shirt off, reaching for my hoodie. The lights went out. Total darkness. The buzzing stopped. No footsteps, no doors. Just silence. Then I heard it. Breathing. Not mine. Slow, controlled. I squinted through the dark and saw a shape between the rows of lockers. A silhouette. Still. Watching. My brain refused to process it. "You forgot something," his voice said from the shadows. My heart slammed so hard I felt dizzy. "I am leaving," I stammered. No response. The silhouette moved. One step. Metal lockers echoed with the sound. I grabbed my bag and ran barefoot toward the exit. The door didn't open. It wouldn't open. My hands slipped on the handle. Behind me, footsteps. Faster now. "Wait," he called out. "This isn't what you think." The handle finally gave. I burst into the hallway. He was right behind me. I could hear his shoes slamming against the tile. I ran out the main doors into the parking lot. It was raining, heavy, cold rain. I didn't stop. I didn't look back. I walked home soaked, shaking, replaying it over and over in my head. The next day, I avoided eye contact. I didn't tell anyone. Not my friends. Not my parents. Not the principal. But something kept bothering me. After school, I checked my locker again. The combination was different. Not the one I had memorized. Not even close. And taped to the inside of the door was a small folded piece of paper. My name written on it. In his handwriting. Inside, just 4 words. Next time, lock the door. He was transferred 2 weeks later. No explanation. No announcement. Just gone. I never reported it. But sometimes I wonder how many lockers had malfunctioned before mine, and how many girls stayed quiet. 3-story, darkness in the music basement. In my senior year of high school, I played in the school orchestra. Music was my escape, the one place where everything made sense. Notes, measures, pause, sound. When I missed a rehearsal, Mr. Nicholson allowed me to make it up during lunch in the music wing basement. It was always colder down there. Narrow stairs, the smell of old wood and metal, small storage rooms lit by flickering lights. That day, it was unnaturally quiet. I stepped into one of the rooms, and the lights went out. Instantly, the darkness felt thick, alive. In the hallway, something was being dragged across the floor, metal scraping against tile. Slow, deliberate. Then, heavy breathing. I stepped into the corridor, keeping one hand on the wall. Something thudded nearby. I ran into another room and shut the door. Complete darkness. And then I felt it. I wasn't alone. I turned on my phone. In the corner stood a man. Not the teacher. Someone else. Dirty clothes, eyes wide open. He didn't blink. The screen went dark. A hand landed on my shoulder. "Quiet," he whispered. His fingers slid to my neck. Tightened. I tried to break free. The door wouldn't open. I pounded on it, but the sound died in the basement. His breathing grew closer. Slower. Calmer. The last thing I remember was the cold floor beneath me, and metal scraping down the hallway again. A few days later, the school searched the basement. They found overturned instruments. And my phone. The screen cracked. The basement was closed after that. But sometimes, teachers say that during lunch break, you can still hear metal dragging down the stairs. Slowly. And heavy breathing in the dark.